So I wanted to talk tonight about this sense of separation. Okay. Because this is something that it seems like we've all bought into in this lifetime, that somehow somehow there's a sense of not quite being able to fully experience life, what life is about. So we pursue lots of things. We pursue career, we pursue relationships, we pursue sexuality, we pursue wealth, power, intoxication. I mean, there's lots of things that we can pursue to sort of feel like we've fully engaged life. Right? And if we've pursued those things vigorously enough, one of the things that we might realize is that all of them can have a certain pleasure element to them that can yield certain rewards in this world, but none of them are ultimately satisfying. The pursuit of any one of those things doesn't solve the great issue of life. What is this about? What is my place in this world? What's actually living this life? Those kind of questions. So what I mean by separation is just this movement towards, you could say, a movement towards unity, a movement towards feeling at home with ourselves, feeling at home in the world, feeling at home with the whole progression of birth, life, death. Being okay with our personality, our stuff. Being at home in the world, right? Being comfortable in our own skin. But to really do that means to be comfortable all the way down, to be comfortable with being in this mystery of life. Right? It's interesting that the word mystery and the word mystics, obviously, come from the same source. So it's mystics. I mean, we think of mystics as people that have fully plumbed the depths of life and have understood something. We think they have some special knowledge, right? They've been given the gift of knowing how everything works. But that's actually not true. It actually is a mystery. It's actually becoming comfortable with living in the mystery of life. It's not solving the problem so that our mind is comfortable with the solution. Like, okay, now I got it. I've got it figured out. I know how this works. I'm good. It's not that. It's like allowing ourselves to sink into really not knowing. I mean, that's what mystery actually is, really. I don't know. Right? I mean, isn't that the truth? Anybody here know how everything works? Has all the answers? Comfortable with that? I mean, that's why dogma is so appealing, is because it's like, oh, okay, now I know. If I just, have this set of beliefs, my mind can relax. There's not this unease of thinking that there's something deeper that is there to explore, something more mysterious at the heart of it. When we go looking within, right, we look within, and sure, there's thoughts and philosophies and memories and ideas of shortcomings and things we think we should have done or shouldn't have done. All of that may be there. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something much more fundamental than that, much more at the core of things. Really, it's the question of who actually is living this life. What is that? And we start asking those kind of questions, and we realize that the answers aren't readily forthcoming. We can't say exactly what that is. I mean, we can all talk about our own patterning, right? Our own conditioning, our own story, where we are in our life, our relationships. We can talk about all that, but does that actually totally define us? Is that actually the totality of who we are? When we start actually looking, and we can notice, yes, I can remember this event, I have this opinion, I have, this philosophy that I'm maybe not so sure about anymore. I have these hopes, I have these beliefs, I have all objects within consciousness, all of it. So while we're going through that litany in our head about who we are and what we've done and what we want to be and all of that, consciousness is present. That's where it's registered. So at some point we can, if we're willing, can become curious about, well, this consciousness, if it's always present every time I check in, and it's where all of these objects are actually noticed, registered. I wonder what that is. I wonder what this consciousness actually is. So that's a fruitful question, And the mark of a really good question is the answers don't come easily. A really good question isn't actually meant for you to get a nice answer. It's really not. A good question actually drops you into that mystery. It drops you into that sense of, I don't actually know. Maybe I've never looked before, but now that I look with openness, a little bit of courage, I can see I don't actually know who's at the depth of this. Maybe I've been a little hesitant to look. Maybe I don't know what I'll find there. I don't want to sort of dig anything up I can't handle. Right? Anybody ever felt like that? So there's some territory there, so, okay, I'm not going to look there. I'll just go about my life. But what happens when we're actually willing to do that, to be curious? Like, I wonder really, what's at the depth of this? Is it, and that usually happens when life disappoints us in some way, right? If everything's going really, really well, you don't come to things like this, generally. It's really like, everything may be going really well, but there's still something that I feel like needs some deeper contemplation, right? So it's a good question really drops us into that, pulls us into that. So a question like, what am I really? I mean, aside from all the conditioning, conditioning, when we really look at it, we can see appears to be at least sort of happenstance. It sort of depends on where you were born, who your parents were, caretakers, who your friends were, who your first boyfriend was, all those things that sort of created a patterning of belief. And one of the beliefs that got patterned along the way, sort of the mother of all beliefs, is I am separate. I am a separate being in a big wide world, and I've sort of got to take care of myself. I got to look out for it. I'm responsible. I am the doer of my deeds. I am the thinker of my thoughts. Right? Isn't that what we've all been taught? The thing is, when we were born, we didn't have that belief. It was a learned, something that was learned over the course of growing up. It seems almost silly to question it, like, what do you mean I'm not the thinker of my thoughts? Maybe it's time for some pharmaceuticals here. So this sense of being separate, it's sort of built into our system. Even as Americans, we sort of value the rugged individuals, make your own way, work your way up the ladder, achievement, all of which is fine, right? There's actually not a problem with any of that. But at some point, if that turns out to be less than totally satisfactory to the point that if you died tomorrow, it'd be okay. Everything's been done. Anything less than that is somewhat unsatisfactory. It's like, yeah, life's been pretty good, but I've got a couple more things to do, and then it'll be good. But that's sort of a promise that's never kept, right? It's always like the next thing will be what is totally makes life totally good. I'm ready. I'm fulfilled. I'm done. I'm good. That's the promise, right? That's why people buy new cars, right? It's like, oh yeah, man, new car. I feel happy, proud. Friends will like me, neighbors will be impressed. But if it was really the car that made you happy, as long as you owned the car, you should be happy, right? But that wears off pretty quick, right? 4 or 5 days later, yeah, it's a new car. A year later, it's like, 2 years later, it's like, what was I thinking? But if something on the outside had the capacity to give us happiness, as long as we had that, we should be happy, right? My suggestion is that, it's undeniable. When we get something that we want, we worked for, finally buy something, have a new relationship, have a new house, whatever, it feels good, right? And we presume that feeling comes from the object. But my suggestion is that it actually comes from the wanting for something more, to be satisfied for just a short time. It's the wanting, the lack of wanting. It feels good. So it's not dependent on getting the new house. But as long as we believe that it's the outside has some ability to satisfy that desire, then, as soon as the new car thing wears off, we want the next thing. As soon as this relationship wears off, we want the next one. On and on and on. More power, more respect. Always something more. That felt good, but it wore off, just like any drug, and then I want more. So this sense of separation, like I say, we weren't born with it, we learned it. We learned it as we are a separate being, and one of the functions of ourselves as a separate being with a brain is that we have this brain function that we call consciousness, right? Everybody learn that in biology? The only problem with that is that nobody's ever been able to show how that works, how brain cells generate consciousness. But the presumption is that's where it comes from, right? But the question is, do we actually know that with absolute certainty, that that's true? Because there's another possibility, right? The other possibility is consciousness exists. And it actually is what enlivens these bodies, notices what these bodies are doing, participates in life as, you could say, this witnessing presence, okay? I sort of hesitate to use the word witness, but it's not a new and improved entity. It's that presence, that conscious presence within which everything else happens. So it seems like a really minor philosophical point, whether consciousness is brain generated or whether consciousness exists. And that's a perfect opportunity for real inquiry. Like, I wonder if that's possible. I wonder if consciousness is actually primary. More primary than these body minds. I wonder if consciousness exists in the absence of this body mind. So one of the really useful things in spirituality is to be honest with ourselves. Belief not only doesn't count, it's actually counterproductive. The spirituality as I'm talking about, it isn't a matter of believing the right beliefs. It's not like getting all our dogmas in a row. It's really allowing ourselves to ask questions. It's actually quite scientific in a way, or good science, not like the science that is trying to come up with, why smoking is good for you. Not that kind of science. The real science where they don't actually know what the answer is. They do an experiment, they don't actually know how it's going to turn out. But whether it sort of does what they think it might or it does something else, either way they learn something from it, right? It's sort of how we've all learned things in our life. We try things, sometimes we stub our toes, sometimes it works out well. Both ways we learn something from it. Next time we may do something a little different. It's not about feeling bad or about something that we did. We can, we can see it. We can see that, we we made an error. We see it, we move on. Hopefully. If we keep making the same error, well, that's a different story. So this sense of separation, of being separate from the world, comes out of this belief that what I am is limited to this body, this mind, this story, history, beliefs, conditioning, all of that package. And to defend that package feels at risk out in the world. Doesn't it? I mean, doesn't it feel vulnerable? I mean, we can do our best to sort of build up a, edifice around us, enough wealth, the gated communities, enough, personality abilities, to defend ourselves when we're talking to somebody, have strong opinions that we can intimidate people with. We can try to protect ourselves, but deep down there's this feels vulnerable, doesn't it? I mean, first of all, it's a lot of work to sort of prop ourselves up to that extent, and it's a daily thing. We can't let down our guard. Someone might just say something to us at the grocery store. It's like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Somebody called me a fool. And who knows, they might be right, oh my gosh. So it's that fragile to try to, maintain this sense of, I'm a separate person and I'm okay. And I hope no one tells me different. But that's the consequence of the belief that what I am is this body mind, this thing that we call consciousness, just a function of the mind, nothing more than that. But I'd suggest this, looking at same facts, but from a different perspective, like this consciousness seems to exist. Every time we check in, we can say, no, yeah, I'm still aware. Right? Sometimes it may be in the foreground, sometimes a little more in the background, sometimes it might be mind-blowing, sometimes it's like, yep, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm aware I'm brushing my teeth. Great. Still the same awareness. It's the awareness that's actually the miracle of this existence. Without the awareness, we would all lead very mechanical, conditioned, stimulus and response lives. But from the perspective of this awareness, just posing the question, like, I wonder if what I am is fundamentally just this awareness, just this aliveness, just a simple sense of existence. Like that's one thing I can actually be sure of. Be sure of that somehow, I may not know what it is, but I know that I exist. Somehow. I know that there's an awareness here. I know there's awareness now. Another object within consciousness, right? It's a mystery. So what if it were possible that this spaciousness, this openness, this awareness was what was actually living this life? Through these conditioned bodies, through these conditioned minds, Yeah. Yeah, not just watching, actually, you could say the life force itself. So when we first encounter that, when we first start really considering that possibility, because again, if we don't know, in this endeavor, the most useful thing is to acknowledge that, well, actually, I don't know. I don't know if it's my brain cells that are generating consciousness or whether consciousness actually exists prior to this body-mind. If we don't know, we don't know. It's a good spot to start, actually. If we start off on a belief, well, so-and-so said this, or, well, I believe this, or I was taught this, we're dependent on someone else's experience. What really counts is our own direct experience. I mean, we can talk about consciousness. We can say that, perhaps consciousness is what we fundamentally are. And, you could leave and think, okay, that's a good philosophy, I'll go with that. But that doesn't do you any good at all. It actually becomes a barrier at that point, because it's like, okay, now I've got a belief and I'm going to defend it, and I'll, just read things that are in support of that. And if someone says something else, I'll get pissed off because I know I'm right, And, it becomes just another barrier. But if we really open to the mystery, it's like, well, actually, when I really stop and look at it, actually, I don't know. I don't know. And what does that feel like? I mean, when we really acknowledge to ourselves, well, maybe we don't know all the things that we thought we knew. I mean, doesn't life feel a little looser? A little more open-hearted? Maybe the other person's right. Who knows? I don't know. It's just like sort of backing off on the certainty a little bit. Because the truth is, we actually don't know. So that's, when I talked before about the mystery or mystics, it's really not that the mystics know a lot of things. It's really that they're willing to really allow themselves to drop into that mystery and allow that mystery to live life. Because life is a mystery. It doesn't mean that we can't live from that mystery, but it doesn't mean that we can't stand back from it and look at it and conceptualize it and come up with a truly satisfactory answer. So it's really allowing ourselves to be willing to step into the unknown. The unknown just means, I don't know. It means stepping into the mystery. The mystery of what actually is living this life. What is moving me to do this or to do that. We think we've been taught that, no, I'm the one doing it. I'm the one deciding, to do this and not do that. I'm the one thinking my thoughts. Another good question right there. Am I the one who's actually thinking these thoughts? I mean, we presume that we are, right? The only problem with that presumption is you're responsible for the good ones, right? And you're responsible for the really crummy ones. All the real judgmental, petty, all those thoughts. If you claim one, you got to claim the other one. If you're the thinker of your thoughts, you got to take the whole mixed bag. But if you say, well, actually, I don't know. I mean, I could think any thought, but then where did that thought come from? You know, you could go with sort of an infinite regression back to where a thought. But the truth is, they seem to arise, and they hang around for a while, and then seem to drop away after a while, and some other thought shows up. You know, and I'm not talking about, you know, when we're on track and we're, you know, we've got a task and we know what we're doing and we think logically for, you know, we can do that for hours at a time. But I'm talking about the rest of the time when our mind sort of just spins like a flywheel, you know, just sort of goes on with out of its own momentum, you know, repetitive thoughts that we've told ourselves a million times for probably a lot of years about ourselves, about other people, those thoughts. You know, we can see, okay, they're just conditioned thoughts, just the next object within consciousness, right? But you can see the difference if we believe that who we are is a separate being thinking our own thoughts, then all of that needs to get solved. You know, you probably can't do it in this lifetime, but a few lifetimes maybe, right? To resolve all that interpersonal psychological stuff. But viewed from a different perspective that, you know, if what I truly am is this consciousness, and yes, there's this conditioned, repetitive thought pattern. Yes, you know, there's this, you know, personality quirks, habits. Consciousness doesn't have a problem with that. It really doesn't. You know, we think it should. You know, we think, well, if this was really spirit, it would have a problem with me. Right? Not me, you know, not with these flaws. Couldn't apply to me. You know, I've got to do something to earn a sense of unity with the whole. So what would you do? Anybody got a good idea of what you'd have to do to earn unity with the whole, with God, with oneness? Anybody have a good plan for that? But that's the presumption, right? I've got to do something to earn it. It can't be just given already, just like that, right? We've been taught somehow that you don't get something for nothing, you know, no pain, no gain. It's sort of built into the culture. So the question is, what do you have to do to become what you already are? So the answer is clear, but we don't believe the answer, right? The answer is, well, how could you? Even the question sounds silly. What would I have to do to be what I already am? It doesn't even make sense. But we think, well, that can't be the answer. I'm sorry? If nothing was required, then what? Yeah. But we're not worthy, though, right? Isn't that the sense? Like, wait a minute, what do you mean I don't have to do anything? What about all that karma? So go back to the beginning. Do you know that's true? Do you know that something is required in order to qualify for this sense of feeling at home in our own skin, in a world, in the universe? Do you know? What if nothing was required? If nothing was required, that would mean, like, right now, right? If there's nothing to do in order to gain approval from some paternal being, then what? It's really relaxing into it rather than storming the gates of heaven, right? It's really like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, it's really not that. It's really seeing that, there's something present here now that is already okay. The consciousness is present for whatever is happening in our mind, whatever we've done in our life, whatever we've got going on now. Consciousness is present for it. The mind may like it, not like it, agree with it or not, but consciousness doesn't actually have a problem with it. It is present for it. It's really like the most devoted lover we've ever had. Present, or the most loyal dog, present no matter what we do, there it is. And yet spiritual people spend a lot of effort chasing it, like, okay, where's this consciousness, right? But consciousness is what is doing the chasing. That's why I can't ever find it, right? Because it's the one that's doing the chasing and it's looking out there. So and it's never going to be found out there.
It's like a dog chasing its own tail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, an eyeball trying to see itself. It can look this way, that way. It's what's doing the looking. So, yeah. So this sense of separation is, in Zen they have this expression, gateless gate. Before you go through the gate, it feels like there's a big, immense gate there. I feel separate, and how do I feel in union with the whole, let's say. How do I feel? I feel separate, but what do I have to do to get through the gate? What do I have to do, think, achieve, imagine, realize, experience to get through that gate? So, but it's actually the presumption that's false. The presumption is I'm a separate being, and I've got to figure out a way to get through that gate. And what do I have to do to get through the gate? Right? Meanwhile, this awareness is enjoying the entire show. The drama. What is it? Comedic drama. It's like it has a comedic element to it. Tragic comedy. There you go. But that's what it feels like. It feels like it's separate. And what do I have to do? What do I have to think What do I have to change about myself? What do I have to improve in order to be worthy to walk through that gate? And in Zen, they talk about the gateless gate, because once you're on the other side of the gate, you realize there never was a gate. That all along, that awareness, that spirit was already present, already. Well, let's call it spirit. That spirit is actually what's motivating the search. It's searching for itself. It's searching for unity. Unity with itself. It's self-recognition is what it is. It's not an altered state. It's not a better concept. It's our deepest nature in search of itself. And when our deepest nature realizes that it is what it searches for, that loop is closed. It's never absent, never deficient, doesn't need to be improved upon. It's always already present in all of us, already, fully. But it's that deeper nature in search of union, in search of completion. And when that's found, when it's realized that that's actually what we are, we always have been, nothing needs to be improved. It just needs to be recognized. When we realize that, there is fulfillment. It is complete. Life goes on, but that sense of completion, fulfillment. We find ourselves at ease in our own skin, at ease in the world, at ease with life, at ease with death. At ease with our own faults, our own personality. It just happens to be how life is showing up in this particular body or that particular body. But it's the one life showing up in its immense variety of manifestations.